Today's video, as you know from the title, is going to be taking care of some odds and ends on this truck behind me. I'm going to give you a little history lesson per se on this truck. For those of you who maybe haven't seen anything about it, there's a playlist on the channel for a whole bunch of videos of me working on this thing. I started documenting it a little ways in, so that's kind of why I wanted to give a little brief history on the beginnings of this truck. So I acquired this original, and I'll place some pictures in here for you so you can see. I acquired the original truck in around about March of 2019. It was a 1967 International Loadstar, had this same grain body with 4-foot sides on it, and a 345 gas engine with a 5-speed trans and 2-speed rear end. Very, very typical of International Loadstars. About 80% of them were that very similar spec. And probably about 80% of them were freaking grain trucks too, at least in this part of the country. I played with it, got it running, sort of. Played with it for a while, kind of hemmed and hawed on what I wanted to do with it long term. And then December of that year, a listing popped up on Craigslist for a 1971 International Fleet Star with a 671 Detroit 2-stroke diesel in it. A 10-speed. It was technically a tandem tractor, single drive with an air lift axle on it, and it was set up as a tractor, as a road tractor, had been originally. Picked it up for a song, I think it was actually the day after Christmas of that year, and picked it up, pulled it back home, and set out to start the swap. The reason I did that swap and why I wanted to do that is the Loadstar and the Fleet Star actually share a cab. So what that allowed me to do was to retain the, as you can see there, the butterfly hood bonnet on the Loadstar. I love that front end, and but switch to a diesel power plant that is just a little more interesting and just something fun. I like working on stuff like that. So like changing things, but keeping them kind of stock appearing still. So at any rate, this truck is what became of it. So you can go back and watch some videos from there on the whole process of what I did. I'm not going to get into all those details, but that's the nuts and bolts of the how and the why of how this truck came to be. It took a couple years. So what I did was I was trying to get it ready to take up to a truck show for its kind of debut, if you will. And that was that show was in September of 2021. So I thrashed and got it ready, took it up there. It was great. I've driven it around since then and enjoyed it, but there was a whole bunch of odds and ends that were still left to do. So what this video is about is tackling a whole bunch of those odds and ends and getting them taken care of and getting this thing almost done. There's going to be 1 or 2 things that are going to be left to do come springtime once it comes out of storage. It is about to go into storage at my shop at work for the winter, so I can free up this space for doing other things. And working on other things, but regardless, it's gonna be close. So we're just gonna have literally a couple odds and ends to do. Otherwise, it can just be a driver and enjoy it and have fun with it, not have to really work on it anymore. So with that being said, let's take a look and see what I accomplished. So it's a little easier to see around the passenger side here of the rig, but you can see I've got the valve cover off. So first order of business is I have never touched this motor, and not that there's anything major wrong with it. It runs great, it starts great, but what I do want to do is check the valve lash, and also I might run the rack. I don't have the tools to do to check the injector lash or whatever you want to call it. I can adjust rack timing, between all 6 injectors. So I may do that, but at the very least, I do want to check the valve lash, which from everything I've read and videos I've watched, it's pretty dang straightforward on one of these. You just bar the engine around until we've got each injector at its full plunge, I guess you'd call it, and then there's just a spec for intake and exhaust. Being the fact that it's a 2-stroke makes things a little easier versus a 4-stroke. So, at any rate, that's item number 1. All right, so what I'm doing here is, if you watch, I've already done cylinder number 1 right here. Now I'm doing cylinder number 2, injector, and then we've got intake and exhaust for intake, exhaust. I don't know which one's which, but regardless, it's just 2 valve heads. So, so what we're doing is I'm not even using a bar, because in this configuration in this truck, it's too hard to get a bar onto the crank. So I'm just using the fan, which is a little hard on my hands, but gets the job done. So I'm watching for that injector to go all the way down, and she's starting to go down right now. I don't know if you guys can see that in the camera. And there it is, just about. Oh, those valves started to go up already. All right, move them back just slightly. There we go. Got just a little bit of play. Now I'm going to check them with my 011 feeler gauge. Oh, easy there, guys. Where are you trying to go? Let's check it. It's pretty tight on that feeler gauge. So, first, I don't remember what size that was. That was a 1/2 inch. Needed a flashlight here. And you can see I've removed the alternator for access. Now, if I had which we might need to do, we might need to bend up a 1/2 inch wrench to make this work, but we're going to try to do it with one that's not been bent. See if we can loosen it. Maybe we can go in right on the linkage there, at least for this one. There. So that one's loosened up, and then we'll take our little baby 5/16 here, and now that everything's loose, well, it helps if we actually turn the right one. We're going to do just a couple little 1/8 turns there. And now, with the jam nut off, we're going to check with our 013. Ooh, that's pretty close, guys. Maybe just no, that's about right. Just a tiny bit of drag. It's almost too loose. Just barely. I'm going to snug that back up just a hair. Nice, easy access. This is why trucks went to tilt hoods, right? That's a little better. Just a hair more drag. So now, all we do, see there, is we tighten that jam nut up. Again, okay, one more snug is good. Now we'll check with the 011. Perfect. Just a little bit of drag. And the 013 should not go in. I can barely push it in, but it's tight. So there we go. That's 1 out of 12. Already had 2 done. 3 out of 12? Shit, we're a quarter of the way done. I'm going to keep going on. I don't think you guys want to tag along and watch every one of those. So the other thing I'm checking with the valve cover off, see if we can set that up. Oh, that's better. You can see I got my vice grips on the rack here. And what I'm watching for is the injector timing. So if you see right down there, I don't know what that piece of junk is in there. can't get it out with my fingers, but apparently we have a piece of grass or whatever that is. But if it'll focus, you can see that's the plunger for the injector. And what you can't see here is we do have all 6 moving. Obviously, this is a good run in 671, so we don't have any stuck injectors. But what I'm checking for is that those are timed, that those are visually timed together. And I can't really show you in the camera here, but what I can tell you is that they're as close as my eye can pick up on. So based on that, I am not going to touch that rack. If they're off, it's imperceptible, and I'm not going to gain anything by taking that apart. In fact, I might make it worse. So because I'm not doing much adjustment on these valves either, I think the overhead was actually ran on this motor relatively recently. I can see the some little nicks and divots on the jam nuts on each valve. So someone's been in here. The motor doesn't have that many miles on it. I can't remember. 160,000, 170,000, something like that. So, I mean, it should have been ran a couple times at least, but it has been done at least once. So, and like I say, I'm not adjusting much, so we're just going to fine tune things and button her back up. All right, guys. Well, I've done some digging into the fuel gauge on the Loadstar here, and what I found is that unfortunately, you can see where I tried to solder it, but the resistor windings inside of the sending unit are no good. So the way it would have worked is this is the float arm, and that contact right there, as it sweeps with fuel level, would hit a different point on that winding, kind of like so. Well, actually, it's facing the other way, but like so. It would rotate, and that would send a different signal back to the gauge. It's broken. What I'm finding is that the sending unit, I've wire wheeled it clean. The only stampings I can find on it are AC made in USA. It also used a AC gauge, as you can see right there, AC spark plug division. It was probably made right down the road in Flint, Michigan, about 15 miles from where we sit right now. But no other numbers. The only other number that I can find is that indicating that it was in fact, a 0 to 90 ohm sending unit. So problem number 2 is that this is an oddball flange, being that it is a 6-volt flange versus a 5. So I did, however, find an autometer kit that adapts what apparently was an early Ford, like something stupid, like 1937 to 1956 Ford used this 6-volt flange. That was a 2 3/4 inch bolt pattern, and it adapts it to a modern, smaller diameter 5-volt flange. So you can get that adapter flange from Autometer for like $40. So I have a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be coming from Summit Racing. So I've got that adapter. I've got a universal sending unit that will drop into the tank, and I can adjust the float arm height to fit anything I want. So obviously it'll work great with this big old tank. And then a Stewart Warner, which this will now be a 33 to 240 ohm fuel level setup. So I've got the appropriate 2 1/16 inch gauge coming. I also went ahead and ordered the tachometer kit, so I can do an alternator driven tachometer. That's also a Stewart Warner. And then I ordered a new boost gauge for the L9000. So we got everything coming. So right now we're dead in the water on this little gauge project. So I'm going to kind of put everything back in my Loadstar parts boxes, and I'll temporarily bolt this sending unit cover back in or tape it off or something so we don't get anything down into the tank. And then here by the end of the week we'll have some parts in, and we can hopefully get all the gauges working, other than Speedo. Speedo still won't work until I find time to get up to a junkyard. So that's where we stand. All right, fellas. Well, we may not have been able to make much progress on the gauges, and the fuel gauge in particular today, but what I did make progress on, kind of half-assedly, is the heater box. So you can see that tube, that metal tube right there. See it? That is out of the Fleet Star, and that is the
crossover box that carries heat over to the driver's side. It also feeds up to the defroster, and there's a flapper door in there, right over there, that controls that. That's froze. There is a cable, but I don't know. It may not be froze. I don't remember, to be honest with you. That was 2.5, 3 years ago. The cable's there and it's hooked, but it doesn't go to anything. So obviously, I'm not real worried about the entire functionality, but I kind of wanted the heater box to work. So the biggest problem was this outlet right here on the box, and the other end of that that crossover tube that's steel was a roughly 4-inch diameter square flexible pipe, and it was completely disintegrated, nothing left of it. So I had some 3-inch intake tubing, as you can see, flexible from my old boat. Some new stuff was new that I had bought a whole bunch of. And then I used, as you can see, some adhesive back foil tape to make the transition. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but you don't really particularly see it. Obviously, when I go to get in the truck, this is in focus what I see. So you look underneath there, and yeah, it's going to look a little janky, but there's not going to be too many people. And that way I actually get air blowing. And the other thing I did, which I'd never hooked up, I tested it, I'd cleaned and got this heater box freed up and spinning, lubricated and everything working, painted it up the best I could. It is rusted out at the bottom, but out of the 2 heater boxes, this was the best bet. And if I remember this, yeah, this was in fact the one out of the Loadstar. But it, when I pull the old fan switch, it actually works. And see if I get any defrost air. I don't feel any defrost air, but I do have air coming out at the driver's footwell. And obviously, if I open that up, I get plenty of air on the passenger side as well. So, good old-fashioned manual controls. So sorry if that was a little loud, but anyway, one more thing done. I put the fuel sending unit cover back on the tank. I'm going to tuck the dash back together real quick, and so that's secured. And at that point now, I kind of want to do this heater control stuff while the doghouse was out, because I really needed it out to be able to finagle around in there. So that's done. Probably going to put the doghouse back on now. I've done what I need to do, and we'll get it jacked up so I can maybe work on a clutch brake. The other thing I did was, my mom actually had bought me these sweet stickers off of eBay. I debated on putting them on because at some point I still have to sand clear coat on this truck, block it down. I've yet to do that. I don't know when I'm going to get to it, because it doesn't excite me very much, but I said to hell with it. This part of the panel on both sides doesn't have any runs or anything or sags, so we went ahead and put those on because they're cool. I saw them actually on a cab over Transtar 4070A single cab up at the St. Ignace Truck Show. Guys up there every year. He actually has a YouTube channel. Can't remember the name. Maybe I'll drop it down in the description. But regardless, he has those on his, and I really liked them. So my mom found them on eBay and ordered me a set. So we got them on. Looking good. Detroit diesel power, right? Okay, guys. I'm going to take you underneath here, show you what I've been doing. Well, we were missing a Zerk in the throwout bearing, and that's back in and greased. And you see that right there? That disc, right? I can't get my finger in there. Anyway, the disc behind the throwout bearing, that's a clutch brake. A new one installed. The old one was a little bit of a pain in the ass to get out, but we'll see. I haven't fired it up yet. See if it works. Got to put the cover back on that still. But got that right here all cleaned up. 4 bolts all cleaned up. Been sitting on my bench for 2.5 years, so that's a good thing. I also built some PTO linkage, just quick and dirty. Seems to actually work. I'll show you where I mounted the PTO cable. I had it. I was going to buy a new one. I was going to route it. I wanted to put it in the dash, and it didn't reach, so I needed a longer one. And I just decided to put it someplace else and use what I had. So this is off right here currently, but all I did was it had an old bent bolt in the linkage arm here, so I took some flat stock and triangulated a mount so I could clamp the cable exterior, and then took a 7/16 bolt. You can see, let's see here, and I drilled a hole in it, and then I drilled and tapped it for a 1/4 bolt as a clamp bolt, and there we go. We got a cable. So that's that. I also greased the entire chassis because I realized I had never done that on this truck. Shame on me. Not that I've put more than probably 100 miles on it, but regardless, it had never been done, so we got grease all over. I mean, I'd done the drive line, but not the rest of the chassis. And surprisingly, kingpins, all the spring bushings, and all the dump hardware all took grease. So good news. I also removed all the old hoses going to these cylinders here. I'm going to have those made. Those were okay. They had some cracking in them, but they're stiff as hell. They're 56 years old, so they're done. But I pulled out all the fittings out of the cylinder. That one there, as well as that one there, as well as all of them in the valve body, and cleaned everything up with the wire wheel, and cleaned up the copper crush washers. Everything nice and neat and ready to go. Took measurements for the drain hose, the gravity drain, back to the PTO, and as well for the pressure line. So I've got everything I need to have those hoses all made. The PTO is hooked up. The dump control is hooked up. Already had been. So I'll get those made this week, and hopefully maybe next weekend we'll be able to have a working dump. My gauges will come, so we might have a working tachometer, a working fuel gauge, along with the working heater I already showed you. Man, odds and ends getting massively taken care of, along with the lash valves. So I have a few other things I want to do, some little touching up some paint and fixing up some last few holes in the firewall. But yeah, we're getting there, boys. So I'm going to slap some paint on this this PTO linkage and the cover, the inspection cover for the throwout bearing. Get that all put on and painted, and then I can let this thing off the jacks, and we can give her a try, see how that clutch brake works, and get it pulled out tomorrow so I can get something else in here to work on. These are the old hoses. You can see they are, I don't know if the camera will show, but I'm pushing pretty hard on that. They are not very flexible. 50 years old in the same position will do that. So I did make a note because of where my muffler is, I need that to be a 45-degree fitting. So a little note and paint pen, but we'll throw those in the back of the pickup and take them in next week to get made. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you can hear this. We're going to test a couple things. If I can pull it out, hold on, I gotta put the phone down. I lubed that PTO cable down there, but it's still a little bit tight. So let's see if we hear anything. Damn two-stroke's too loud. It is. All right. test that out. Hold on, bear with me. As I drop my phone. Okay. And it stopped. All right. So PTO works.
Okay, so here is where we're at. In addition to the things that you just saw, there was a couple other odds and ends I took care of. You can see for well-trained eyes, there's a few little things that are a little cleaner under here. We got some paint on things like the power steering reservoir, the air intake for the compressor, just some various lines, bolt heads, miscellaneous stuff, the hinges and bolts for the butterfly hood, all that kind of stuff wasn't quite detailed yet. So that's all been done now. I also probably won't be able to see it. Right down here, if you follow this clutch linkage right here, and you see right there, if you can, right there, there's a gap now. That's the steering shaft, and that was rubbing. So when you turn the steering wheel, you could hear it binding, and obviously when you push the clutch, it would bind, and it would actually want to hold the pedal and make releasing it harder. So if you watch some videos where I'm kind of jerky with the clutch, letting it out, part of it's because maybe I'm not as good as I want to be well, actually I take that back. I'm pretty good at driving a stick. I've been driving a stick for a long time, but obviously I'm used to driving synchronized transmissions. So only in the last 2 or 3 years have I really tackled honing my skills on unsynchronized transes. But obviously letting the clutch out is the same the world over. So I'm not really that bad at letting the clutch out. What it is that was binding, and so it would actually hold that clutch arm, and then all of a sudden it would release all at once. So took that clutch linkage off and took the torches to it and just kept tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and playing until I got it to where it's clear the whole way around. It was also binding on the frame rail down there, so got that fixed, lubed everything up. All the pins are all greased and new hardware in them, and that's working great now. So, but overall, so we've accomplished actually a lot more than I expected. We in a couple of weekends time, we got the valve lashed on the motor. We got a clutch brake installed. We got PTO cable and linkage installed and operable. We got I said clutch brake. We got the gauges all kind of sorted and squared away, but we didn't get done. We got ordered. I wiped the whole thing down and got her all shiny and pretty. Heater box is working. So we're doing really well. And we lubed the whole chassis, which I had never done before for some reason. But I'm just going to give you a little quick walk around on this old girl. And for those of you who might be new to check it out, and again, I encourage you to maybe watch some of the older videos on the channel on this truck. And I'm not going to walk around the other side because you can't see much. But maybe a little look up the skirt there. But yeah, so appreciate you watching, seeing what the Loadstar is all about and what I'm up to working on it. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing pulled out and put outside because I need to bring my pickup in and do a little work on that today. And I'm going to take advantage of the heat. So hope you guys have a great week. As always, thank you for watching, and I appreciate it. We'll catch you later.